Taylor's pose is designed to help increase your range of motion for your adductors. The ADDUCTORs, they sit on the inner side of the thigh, the inner groin essentially, and they're going to help allow you to go, if they're loose, wider and more into middle splits, these kind of things, but also into external rotation as well. Both of which, external rotation of the femur by the way, both of which are required for middle splits, but also overall hip mobility. So there's a bunch of different tools we're going to use for this, but the first most important thing is that you have a nice, soft, comfortable surface to sit on. Then all you're going to do is bring your feet together and make sure your lower back is nice and snug up against a wall or supported surface. Yeah. Now from here, I like to actually anchor my feet into place. It's also a really great way to make sure I'm staying consistent, because as the closer the feet get to the groin, the harder this is for the adductors, the further away they are, and you'll be able to see this. See, if I push this weight away and allow my knees or feet to go further, look, my knees are already lower to the floor. There's less demand on those adductors. So keeping a weight in front here will help keep you honest and also be able to measure your progress a little bit easier. Now from here, if you're new to this position, and say your knees are all the way up here, potentially you need to elevate yourself with a yoga block or some kind of step, and that might make it a little bit more comfortable for you. But say you're new to this, say you're new to stretching your adductors, and there's a lot of big stretching sensations, a little bit uncomfortable, maybe potentially sitting like this is enough. Otherwise, as we start to get used to and comfortable with this, we can start to add load onto this to start to passively stretch this position. So I like to actually rest the dumbbells in a way where they're kind of supported by themselves and not going anywhere. And you'll have to play around with the weight a little bit. For those who are usually find flexibility easier, I would go with a lighter weight. Those that struggle with flexibility, typically guys or very tight people through the hips, potentially heavier weight will be more beneficial initially. But you want to be able to play around with it, and you want to make sure that you feel comfortable and never unsafe. If you feel unsafe with the weight that you've placed on yourself, it's probably too much, yeah? And so just be mindful of that. So one of the first methods of opening up or understanding this position is literally just sitting here. And so, you know, this isn't my first time doing this, so these 2 8 kilos feel pretty damn comfortable, and I'm getting a little bit of a stretch through the adductors. So we could just sit here for time. But then as we get more familiar and comfortable with this position, and say we've been spending some significant time in it, you know, minutes at a time, multiple times a week or over the course of weeks, we can then start to play with also some contractions. Yeah, so even in this position, we can do some crack protocols, so some contract, relax, antagonist, contract to try and yield more range and use that reciprocal inhibition. That's also possible in this position. But before we do that, I do have these yoga blocks for a reason here. And another thing you can do just to feel more comfortable is get some yoga blocks and place them where you can just kind of feel your legs, maybe the hairs on your legs if you're a guy, but maybe you can sense that those yoga blocks are really, really close. So I have to use some quite small ones because my knees are already almost on the floor. But by having this and having something that your legs can rest on, that's going to help create kind of invisible safety net for your CNS to be like, okay, cool, I feel safe here, I feel supported here, I'll let you go a little bit further down. So that's another technique that you can use if you're just passively holding it, right? If you're just letting the weight pull you down. And then as the legs start to make more and more contact, you can slide those yoga blocks out a little bit and let that process continue again. And now I'm getting a bit more of a stretch. I'm starting to get a bit more contact on the yoga blocks, and that CNS is letting the weights win essentially slowly over time. Now, I was talking about a crack protocol, and that is the next step. So for this, to do a crack protocol here in this position, what we would do is contract the muscle being stretched, which would be pulling the knees up, yeah? So I'm going to do an overcoming isometric where I place my hands on the dumbbells, and now I'm going to press up into my hands. I'm not going to let the knees win. My hands are going to be stronger than my knees and press down. So in this position, I don't want to let the knees win. I'm purposefully letting them not win. I'm creating a strong contraction here, and then I can relax. I'll describe how long I want you to do this in the description on the app. But otherwise, you'll notice that this now can relax a little bit more. So we could potentially just do those, a few contractions up, you know, holding for time, 5 to 7 seconds, and then relaxing. But we can also do an antagonist contraction as well, which in this case would be our glutes. So after we've done our 7-second contraction up, we could then use our glutes to try and pull the dumbbells away from our hands for 7 seconds using the strength of our glutes. Now I'm getting a really strong sensation here, and also I can feel my glutes working. Now we can see the knees are coming closer to the floor. And then you could rest, repeat, and that would be the crack protocol, nice and simple. So again, that would be a pressing up for 7, and then glutes on, pulling the dumbbells down towards the floor for 7 as well. And that is your Taylor's pose. Now, one quick thing, if you've already got your knees pretty close to the floor, or you're getting the knees to the floor already, one little way that you can then step this up is by getting a yoga block and placing it in between your feet. And you can see here, just by putting that yoga block up, my knees are significantly higher now, and I can repeat that process. Now, going from no yoga block to a yoga block, that will probably happen over weeks, unless you're already knees to the floor. And you got to remember, just like anything flexibility, the gains are going to be marginal for most people. So they're going to be centimeters to millimeters at a time. As long as you ended the session deeper than what you started, you've done a good job. And that is your Taylor's pose.